Welcome back. You're still tuned into Business Lunch on CNBC-TV18. Well, the Indian government has released its borrowing calendar for the second half of the fiscal, has estimated that it will borrow 6.55 lakh crore rupees. This includes sovereign green bonds worth 20,000 crores. Latha is joining us with more details and what it means. Latha.
Well, actually, it was a no surprises announcement. The government has said that in the second half, starting October 1, they will borrow 6.55 trillion rupees. The math is easy. In the February budget, the full year borrowing program was 15.43 trillion. As of September 30th, they would have borrowed 8.88 trillion. So you subtract and you get 6.55. So no surprises. But what we need to know, and again, this is not a surprise, the market knows it. In the second half, there are huge redemptions of bonds issued long ago. There is redemption of 3.75 trillion rupees. So if you do the math, the net borrowing as a percentage of total full year borrowing is only 34%. Usually half is borrowed in the second half, but because you take away this redemption, the borrowing as a percentage of total is only 34%. This is the lowest in over a decade. I don't have numbers before that. Maybe it is, a multi-decade low, except for the COVID year when the second half borrowing was only 32% of the total. So this should be a positive. Also, by the second half, fourth quarter, you will start seeing people, foreign funds buying bonds ahead of India's inclusion in the JPM bond index. So that should be a good period. We should see yields fall. Now, let me tell you, here comes the wet blanket, the people who disagree with it. And among them is Nomura. Nomura is of the view that, the collections of the government via taxes is actually undershooting. They are giving many reasons why they may actually overshoot on the borrowing. First one is that tax collections could be lower. If you look at the April-July numbers, they are far lower than what the budget is put out. The second reason is that divestments may not come even to the minimal expectations that have been put up in the budget. Third, revenue expenditure so far has been fairly high. The budget had a very, frugal view of revenue expenditure. They said revenue expenditure YOY will rise only by 1.4% in FY24. But if you look at the April-July numbers, it has risen by 16%. So imagine how much they have to cut. And Nomura concludes by saying, we actually expect, or that is, they actually expect revenue expenditure to increase because this is a pre-election quarter. And food and fuel prices are unusually high. So instead of cutting revenue expenditure, actually there could be more revenue expenditure which on fuel and food, which could actually lead to lower capex and perhaps even a higher borrowing. So they are actually bearish on bonds. And just a few points, some unusuals. There is a new 50-year bond that has been announced. It could be because the EPFO and insurance companies are asking for it. Secondly, the amount of 10-year bond is very high. And they've reduced the amount on 14 years because there isn't much demand. So that 10-year could be, too much of supply could be an issue. There is a modest amount of green bonds. Nobody really is very happy about it because the government doesn't seem to be creating liquidity there, so you don't buy and sell. And finally, no FRBs, floating rate bonds, but that's a good one because nobody's interested.
All right, so that's all the insights on the government's borrowing plan for the second half. But Latha, stay on.